got 6:50.
Be together at least.
It's too long.
Looks like it was the kind of stuff.
I was gonna see if,
I was thinking-
I'm going to see this in the morning. I knew it.
Talk about trash.
Maybe this one.
Oh, thank you. Support.
No, that's every day, Bryce, 7:30.
Well, I mean,
7:30
Since I'm not super
Pretty big.
in my
I
wellness
can
Wednesday.
to go full screen. Do you know?
what's
how to
your
do full
Wellness
screen?
Wednesday workout?
Oh,
No,
tomorrow.
pants and
I
sweatshirt.
want to make.
And then-
Yeah, presentation.
Old
I'm
as
sorry.
you
This guy right
All
here.
right.
9 and 1 at 12:30.
Right there.
There you go.
There you go.
Our commission's
So I
at
got
5.
59.
Oh, perfect. I need to get off.
That clock is go through,
I can-
jump back or Bryce. Someday.
But,
I got 98.
Sunday.
Oh, this should be out here by,
I can go
11 o'clock.
I could go all day.
Don't
Don't need it. Thank you, because I just leave it here.
Stop when your finger
Yeah.
gets tired.
I left my mouse up here for presentation, and this is so unforgivable, but I use a 1995 Microsoft
Oh.
Intel mouse because it is the best mouse I've made, and that's just
It's good.
the mouse that I feel like
There
what else
was.
I should use. And I have more of them, obviously, because I'm a dork, but like finding them is really hard. Like to buy one of them online, it's like $150. Like buy a 1995.
Yes.
Kind of the-
It's like a classic car. except it
Johnny.
works.
Ready?
So I drove all the way out here.
Okay.
No.
We're gonna
I
call the
didn't-
meeting to order. Roll call, Alicia.
Alicia, Betsy
Here.
Moran.
Here.
Jason Franzen.
Here.
John Sutherland.
Here.
And Dale is not here. Special order of business. Item A is presentation of phase 1 of the City of Delano rebranding process, and we are super excited.
Yay. Me too.
So we have Jeff Johnson here with Replace. We're in the first phase of our process here, and we wanted to get you council all in a loop here, right at the beginning, so you can see where we're starting, give you opportunity to talk it through, to have suggestions, and then we'll start the next phase once we get everybody's comments. But he has a presentation he'd like to go through, and
You bet.
yeah,
That's me.
thank you.
Hi, I'm
Hi.
Jeff Johnson. I own a design company called Replace, Minneapolis. Had the company for 26 years, so it's kind of been around a while. Before that, I was a design director for a big global agency, and before that, I was a farm laborer on a poor farm in North Dakota. So that is my life experience. Very honored to be working for the city of Delano. Our company is very small. We're just a company of 4 people and deliberately small. My experience in running a large agency did not allow me to work for folks like you, and you're the folks I want to work for. And municipal branding is actually kind of one of my favorite things. I've been lucky enough to design the Minnesota State Fair. That's cool. Did the city of Columbia Heights a few years ago, which was great, and did city of Becker and a bunch of other ones. But a city is an identity. That is what you are. That's what you represent yourself as. My job is to create a design system that will outlast me for decades and decades. And the goal is to make me obsolete. Or I would say, like, if my studio gets struck by a meteor, it's not going to matter. Like, we'll make a system that will last forever. So I've been doing a big deep dive learning about Delano. Going into a project, I try to make myself willfully ignorant, but I'm finding out a lot about your city that I really, really dig. And finding out that it's not just a bedroom community at all. It's actually a pretty vital, great historical community with a lot of historical architecture that other cities do not have. So I know you've got other stuff on the agenda, and I could talk all night, so I will choose not to do that. But I'm going to take you through some of the directions of work, and this doesn't have any of like the preliminary research that we did. We're just going to write into the design work. The point of any identity direction is to try to make something that reflects and kind of amplifies a community. We came out here and we did research and we just studied a lot of the material around Delano. The great thing about Delano is you didn't tear stuff down, so way to go. Becker didn't do that. Becker blew it all up. It's all gone. So like their expression was much different.
Mhm.
But you do have a lot of historic material around here, and that's valuable. That's great. Like the reason that people would live in Delano are not the reasons why people live in South Minneapolis, where I live. And the reasons that people live in Delano are not the reasons people live in Alexandria. There's a really unique perspective on the city that we dig a lot. So first direction we did, the signage and directly outside the municipal utility power plant is definitely something to note as you work on the rebranding. It's really pretty cool stuff. The type treatment are elegant, refined, and convey a sense of history, both in the application and the characters and stylings. This direction looks and harnesses that historic elegance while also bringing into the modern age. So this I would describe as probably one of our more conservative approaches, and that's not a bad word. It's just we're trying to be reflective of what we're finding around it. We found some really cool things on that typography that we actually liked quite a bit, and we tried to do our little design kerning and our design work that makes it a little bit more sustainable for small space digital. This is more dorky stuff, just showing different ways of setting and tracking that typography. Showing the different expressions. Again, this gets down to the tiny parts of design where like the tiniest font change makes it look a little bit more classic, makes it a little more retail. And then what do we do when we wrap? A great tagline that half of my job is writing taglines. I don't need to do that here. The spirit of community is really a great tagline. And if it wasn't, I'd tell you. In fact, it's something I think you can do a lot of great things when you unpack it. It can be the spirit of a lot of things. And then just kind of mining some of like the great things you have already. So we didn't invent fireworks as your city icon, but if you were to ask me about fireworks, they say energy and they say celebration. They don't have to look like Valley Fair fireworks. They can look like whatever we want. So I wanted to show you guys what it looks like when we take fireworks and we make them a little bit easier in a small space digital environment and a little bit easier to animate, and how that might work with a city of Delano identity. And we kind of stumbled into your fireworks, like that we really dig them. There's a lot of non-fireworks material too, but I would tell you that if you were to hand me an icon that was about fireworks, I would stay very close to it because I like it a lot. And then just architecture of the city. Again, you've got things that other cities don't. We just studied some of the entablature around town, like the Jerome Building, which has some pretty cool facets in it. We could make an identity system where it's not just one thing, like perhaps the main identity system just has fireworks, or if we decide we want to have some areas change out, we can make a system that is that robust. And we kind of gave them homework to pick some of their favorite buildings. I'm now giving you the same homework because there's things that we like in the city of Delano, but if there's certain properties or just certain facets that you like, I give that same homework to Columbia Heights, and they went bananas. They gave us 50 places to illustrate, like, and we did them, like we made them all. And now it's a coloring book that they hand out to kids so kids can color stuff around the community. But the idea of actually swapping out different things that are cool in the city, making a city seal. This is designed to be a historical interpretation of the town, but we can do things with the color, with historical typography that make it a little bit more joyful and maybe a little bit more modern. This is some color explorations on what we might do for the city of Delano. And we really did this. We went around, go ahead.
Question. I always wanted to know this. I mean, some of the buildings in town that are original, I think you described as entablature, but ultimately the architecture, I mean, it's Victorian era, but that's not necessarily what it's called. Do you know what it's called?
Depends on the building. Some's Rococo, some would be like postmodern, some would be, depending on when they were made. A lot of them are Art Deco. Looks like they're all about 1920, like 1900 to 1920. But there are some that like are almost Moorish, like they look like it's like somebody looked at a book in Spain in 1900 and said, make it look like that. But it's really eclectic, and I think that's pretty cool. But on the color, we really just did this around town. We took photos and we sampled the brick. We kind of sampled the different shades of color in the water. We sampled the grass. These are just colors that reflect different parts of the city. And they're beautiful. Like, I mean, I don't think I need to tell you this, but you've got a really beautiful town. Like, it looks cool every part of the day. And I would tell you, like, some cities don't have that. The city of Fargo, where I'm from, sometimes it doesn't look so great. Sometimes it just looks like dirt. So this is what a modular identity system looks like. Again, my job is to come here and research. This is stuff I can't do for Coke when I'm designing for Coke. I don't get to do that. But you can come here and you can find, okay, these are some cool parts of the city. Even the public safety department, like if you illustrate it correctly, it looks pretty interesting. And it's also proprietary. It's stuff that other cities don't have. And then fireworks, I could spend 3 months just redoing fireworks in cool patterns and doing something cool with it. The fact that you have fireworks and none other cities around here don't have that, like that's pretty rad. That's easy for me to do something cool with. what business cards look like in the scheme, what stationery. These are kind of the nuts and bolts of an identity system. How to do this in an economical way, where maybe if we do the print material, it's just one color, so it's not an expensive choice. What is signage? What do the materials for collateral look like? Even some of the existing properties, like we don't really want to re-sandblast everything, but we could certainly just sandblast fireworks, and that would tie it back into the system. Or if we want to keep using some of the kids' art, which I think is great, how could we finish that so we're not redesigning everything? Because I don't think we need to. Oh, this is a fun little exercise. We went through sort of a triad of 3 different personalities. This is always a fun thing to do. If Uptown Minneapolis is more like a Post Malone, sort of like want to be cool just to be cool. If Audrey Hepburn is classic, always in all generations, and Keanu Reeves is sort of hardworking, but definitely he's more friendly and approachable. This direction definitely is more Audrey Hepburn. And we really just, we kind of went back and forth, like people who would be living in Uptown would definitely want to lean more Post Malone, and that's fine. But this direction is a little bit more Audrey Hepburn. We change these up for every client. Direction 2. So there's also some real working class street cred in Delano, and it's a working town. So this direction is designed to be much more of an efficient, I would say purely modernist approach. Given the plethora of unique typography scattered throughout the city, we look to the Delano Mercantile and Legion for inspiration for the direction. These are 2 good directions that show okay, this is a working town. There's been a working class community here for a long time. Moving away from the Audrey Hepburn sort of classic approach, what could we do to take this typography that we found around town and make something we know that could last for another 20, 50 years? Then did the same thing, started running it through typography. And you'll see a little bit difference in just how we are illustrating fireworks. It's a little bit more modern. It's a little bit more modular. And what can we do to the typography to make it interesting and fun when we want to animate it? And this typography is designed to look, I would say, just a little bit more working class and a little bit more down to business. Still using the fireworks, but a little bit different expression. How can we do the same seals? I would say this is more small town and not apologizing. Like, you are a small town. That's great. You're not Minneapolis. This is designed to be more of a small town experience and a little bit more approachable. Colors here, a little bit more bright, a little bit more retail. It's designed to be seen quickly. And just what can we do to make it more of a tourist environment? And then illustration. So we're all illustrators in my company. So we picked some of the things that we liked. We picked a great building next door, and we just started to illustrate it in a way that it looks like it's going to be here for another 100 years. And I do say this when I do municipal stuff, like when you give us the assignment of what to illustrate, that will probably be why it lasts. Like if we start making posters of these buildings, then they can become more important. And we saw it with Columbia Heights, they deliberately had us do the Heights Theater because they didn't want to lose the Heights Theater. We did really elaborate Heights Theater stuff. So the homework that you'll be giving us would be if it is the Granite Works building, if that's something you want to save, then that's an assignment you give me and say, okay, do a great illustration of that. But you can see how this is a different expression of the community. And it's designed to be much more approachable and a little bit more inside the working class. And you can just write, you can write all kinds of copy for Delano. Get the Delano glow. That's one of my favorites. Take a stroll in Delano, play like a pro in Delano. And a lot of this copy is just for exploration, but it's fun to write. And you can see it's a little bit different vibe. It's definitely much more municipal. It looks more like a school probably than it does a retail environment. And they're both equally valid. How do we do signage? Expression of what a website landing page might look like. And you can see this one moves up a little bit more to the working everyday actor. He's trusted, working all the time. It's a little less Audrey Hepburn, but still hopefully not Post Malone. And then direction 3. I live in a lot of Post Malone stuff.
A few of them made me think that we were sponsoring an art crawl.
Yeah.
That was what I was thinking on some of those slides, but
Yeah, and certainly certainly the Northeast Art Crawl is a big reason why Northeast now exists, because they invested much into that.
typo.
but not really what Delano is all
Yeah,
about.
Sure, sure.
I do have to say, we loved this sign so much.
I know,
Because it's misspelled.
because it's misspelled.
It's misspelled. We actually decided to make a special CK that is both of those things, so we got that coming up. So this direction actually just sort of like, it's inspired by a lot of the different expressions we see around town and have an eclectic look and feel. We wanted to do one direction that was a little bit more feminine, just so you can see the difference, you know, and one that was designed definitely to be, to your point, more of an Art Deco expression. So in terms of like the architecture you see around town, this looks like one of the pieces of typography that you normally see above those buildings that all have names. You know, it's a little bit more fine, it's a little bit more serif, and it's designed to be a little bit more feminine. And it feels interesting, you know, it's cool. Again, from the second direction, which is a little bit more working class, I would say this one is designed to be a little bit more gender neutral and a little bit more refined. And how could you do with the typography around it? Colors here would be a little softer. I would say a little bit more spring focused and just a little bit quieter. And not good or bad, but this definitely gives a different expression. There is a lot of attraction to Delano in that it isn't loud. It's not a loud place. Like it's designed to be much more of a quiet experience. And I would say that in our studio, we're not an either or studio or really an and studio. Ultimately, as you look through this work a few more times when I'm not here, you'll see that there's probably some things you might like that can be moved around. So quieter colors could certainly work with some of the other directions.
Sorry, Betsy, define a loud town.
Oh, gosh,
And not to be smart. I want to hear that one.
for sure.
That's fine.
I would say like some of the loud towns that are loud on purpose would be in Minnesota. Duluth is loud. It's a loud industrial town. And there's a lot of parties that go on there and it's a big event town. So it's like a chest beating town. They chest beat all the time. That's their job.
Okay.
You know, to some degree, Fargo has actually become a kind of a loud town because they're always trying to get conventions. The Bison have become a big moneymaker. They're constantly screaming for attention. And, you know, that's good for them. Delano is not that. This is a working town and it's designed to be a place where you can raise families. So your expression, I don't think is definitely one that's very loud. Certainly could be if you were to give me that marching order, but that's not what we've gotten through our discovery. Like what people really like here, it's a quiet town in the evening. It's a quiet town on the weekends. Even though fireworks are your symbol, it's not like my wife's hometown of Anaheim, California, where she grew up a mile from Disneyland and there's fireworks every day at 9 p.m. Anaheim would be a very loud town. But in terms of the color here, this is designed to be much more peaceful and much
Can
more.
I make a
tranquil.
point about this? Just happened to think this about this particular type. Whenever I'm talking to a telemarketer or somebody from somewhere, they always say Delano. And this looks to me like Delano.
Yeah, and it probably will. If you make any kind of special thing around the A, that is actually a pretty good point.
Mhm.
So when we do fancy things with typography, when they look nice, great. But if you run this around and go Delano, well, that doesn't work.
Right, because that's not where we are.
No.
Right,
It does sound good. It sounds like you're in Italy. Yeah,
yeah.
that's the first time I've heard Delano.
I get
Oh, we
that
get it.
all the
Oh, yeah.
time.
The
Yeah.
last time.
So fireworks, again, you can illustrate fireworks 1,000 different ways. You can see when this is just a little bit more softly expressed. It's not quite as hard as some of the other stuff we did earlier. And you know, you have a royalty coronation. So like there's really, if we were to do a modular identity system, I'd like to make something we can swap different things out. If they're interesting to the people of Delano, then they are interesting to me. And how to express spirit of community, business cards, all the same nuts and boltsy stuff. But you can see it just feels a little bit softer and a little bit more approachable. Oh, I need to point over here. We did a full character set, so all of our type is custom typography. It's custom typography. We made a special CK, so it can always be a CK. In your font set, there will be a CK. Because I love that type of. When we found that, we were like, "Oh, that's great." Because you can tell there was some stonemason was like, "Oh gosh,
That was the piece of granite they picked out, and now look what I did.
Yeah. So I just say embrace it forever. It's Kramer
Yeah.
Park, but it's got its own special character.
Sure.
And I want to make T-shirts out of Kramer Park. I want to make everything with that CK. Because I can imagine working in the foundry that day and like, oh, okay, now I got to figure out how to fill in, how to fill in dolomite. website. And then this we really got into. So when we assigned ourselves or we work with these guys to pick some of your properties, this is what I mean about leaning in to places. So if this property next door is important to you or it's important to the community, my job is to lean in and illustrate it in such a way that can be used for multiple things. It can be banners inside the city.
I wish it
wayfinding.
looked like that.
Well, that's the idea. Like part of my job is to create that hopeful life for the future.
In the right sunlight.
Well, you're in the right
Perhaps.
direction, Jeff.
But if there's property that you want to save that are really important, my job is to illustrate it in such a way that it becomes more of an icon for the city. And it's kind of ambivalent as to what you pick. So when you work together and decide what you want us to like illustrate, you know, the little things that we can do for the Eagle Printing Office is to put, maybe this one's in a night setting and we put a cat in the window. Or we pick a few that are in a day setting. And I think this one is cut off, but actually it has a little dog sitting on the bottom. Or if there's new things that aren't designed yet, like the archery program, like we don't have that location yet. My job is to create just like heroic imagery. Like this is the fun thing about working for municipalities. Like when we designed the Minnesota State Fair, they had 40 acres that hadn't been developed yet, which is like the West End development. So we just made, you know, our ideas of what they were going to be. So when you've got projects that are 5-10 years out, my job is to make interesting visuals that look cool. And I'm a big fan of archery, so I'm glad you're dedicating to this. And you get to see what this stuff looks like over time.
There's the dog.
And it's great. It's fun to do. Like it's really a fun program. So the homework I'd give to everybody here, the same thing. If it is the sewage treatment plant, I will illustrate it in such a way that it looks great. like that's my job. When working in the city of Minneapolis is actually really proud of their sewage treatment plant because it's a really good one, I guess. So this one is a little bit more Audrey Hepburn, but it's moved away. It's kind of more towards the midline. It's not quite as classic and not quite as conservative. And then direction 4. Hey, we're not done. Direction 4. So this direction 4 is based on the architecture of the city. We illustrated some of the historic buildings in a modern way to visualize readability and small space environment. So again, you've got things other people don't have. Is there another city in the state that has an onion dome? I think you're the only one.
Yeah.
Well,
Really good.
no, because in Northeast Minneapolis,
Oh,
Saint Cyril Methodist
yep.
is
If you want me-
Roman Catholic.
If you want me to blow that up, I will.
Yeah, I authorize you.
Seal under approval.
Our kids were baptized at Holy Cross, so I was going by this place a lot, so.
But it is like the onion dome here. That was the first thing I
It
saw.
is rare.
Yeah.
I don't see
It
it.
is rare.
So this idea would be like, we'll do perhaps, I would say a more municipal type treatment, like it looks more like a city type treatment. But then we make the entablature all of the things that are unique to Delano. And again, this is just what we picked. You might have other things. But the idea is we find an illustration style that is simple. It can read in small space digital environment, but we can adjust it as we need to. So you can see when we change the type a little bit, this becomes a little bit more classic. This probably becomes a little bit more industrial. And I mean, they're all functional. We picked the one that we thought that was the best match for this direction. But we can swap it out. It can be just one piece at one point. And again, in a digital expression, this can also animate. So different things can come up on top of it and it'll all sort of look the same.
I'll make a comment. My wife's from Poland and
We're in Poland.
in Warsaw.
Yeah, my sons were just there.
Oh,
My
okay.
17 and 19-year-old sons traveled by themselves this summer
Oh,
and like next to a war zone and they just went to Warsaw.
yeah, no, well, yeah. No, great. And my niece just went there on a Fulbright. So, but one of the reason why I mentioned it was my wife, comes from a completely different country. For her, Delano was a completely new thing for her. But in her country, when you drive to the countryside, one of the observations, and I saw it right off when we were driving to Gdansk, is all the small towns, they were 3 to 4 miles apart, and you could always see the church or something like this, and off in the distance, and like this. And so she thought one of the things that made her feel comfortable coming here, I mean, she would come here anyway, but comfortable, and observation she had was, coming from different directions from Delano is St. Pete's and stuff, which is, rather large church and things. And that was one comment she made. She said for her, from Delano from a distance, she says you could plunk it down, into Poland, or something like this from her standpoint, her experience. And that was one of the comments. And she's a graphic designer too.
Yeah.
But that was something, observation she had.
And compared to the local communities that surround us, or even most of the communities built in rural America, the first thing you're going to see is the water tower.
Mhm.
Like that's not necessarily the best representation of the town. But the fact that you have this actually doesn't make it feel much more like a European village.
Mhm.
That's the first thing I noticed when I came through here. So again, homework for you as you start patching, we're looking through the materials. If this was one of the directions, certainly this is one of the studio favorites because it's fun to
Mhm.
design this one. If these represent things you like, great. If there's other things that make sense, do it. But that onion dome is just impossible not to fall in love with. And then how do you stack it together? How do you put spirit of community? Colors here, I guess we're very leaning into municipal colors here. They're not retail colors. They're designed to look more like a city. You see what happens when we put more retail colors in here. It's bright, it's interesting. Maybe those become special event colors. Very similar color palette that we had for the first direction on this one. The great thing about fireworks is you can put them anywhere. Like they're really, thank you. Thanks for like letting us walk into that great design solution. But if for some reason fireworks became something you didn't like, we would adjust. But we really had a good time designing inside of that stuff. And then making little special marks for each of these areas. If you were to go down this direction, I would like to do special ones for the building department, special ones for public safety, special ones for planning and zoning. We did that for Becker, and that really helped bring
Mhm.
brought unity to the brand, but it also made like the police department feel special, and it made the parks department feel special. And if they're feeling special, then I'm feeling special. See the show in Delano. That line just writes itself. Which now I want to, for 25 years, my 4th of July tradition is to row my family and friends out in the middle of Lake Calhoun, and we just try to watch all the fireworks we can from Lake Calhoun. But next year I want to come out here, do the same thing.
You won't be disappointed.
Not by what I found.
Come
No.
early so you can have
That too.
play bingo and.
I might need to
Have
stay
hamburgers.
overnight,
At the park.
so I won't have to worry about
Don't
driving.
whirl.
So I won't have to drive home. So I might actually have to
We're the second largest parade in the state after the Aquatennial.
Oh, really?
And the
Yes.
average attendance is can be up to 250,000 people over a period of 3 to 4 days.
That's one I don't know. And this one probably,
And we definitely have people coming in from the cities for this.
but I will spend the night because I don't want to have to worry about driving home after that event. And then signage, just like making some special wayfinding and some icons around the system to make it a little bit easier, maybe for, non-English language users or early language users. Materials around the brand. Yes, have to do that. I don't know where we're gonna put that line yet, but like we were talking with Phil, we were talking about Deli yes. Maybe we just save that for like commercial applications. When you get approved, you get a Deli yes at the end of it. But we could not walk away from that.
I always said our water should be called Delano.
Yeah.
No,
I think you may
we
need,
could bottle that and sell it on the 4th of July. Delano,
Or a
right out of the tap to
or a
you.
pasta sauce, Delano would also work fine.
Yeah.
But the Deli yes stuff, like it just, you have a flexible name that's actually a lot of fun to write around. That actually came from Lucas Richards, who's one of our senior designers. It was actually his wife who came up with that one. But the business system, you can see the supplies. This shows you a difference between a much more municipal palette into something that's a little bit more retail. What stationery look like. Again, this is just kind of working through the numbers of what this direction might look like.
I'm guessing the municipal colors are less,
This
gaudy sounds too strong, but it's
that's
like,
the right word. That's the
Okay.
correct word. So like
Okay.
most retail color palettes, like you go into a shopping mall, most of the retail palettes are just very really saturated colors, like Disneyland colors. A municipal palette is generally something a little bit more subdued. So that would be grays and blues. And we're a little bit ambivalent. For Becker, they really wanted to attract light industrial business. That was a big deal for them, light to heavy industrial business. So the color palettes we used for them were designed really to kind of attract those. And that's really what I'm doing. Like I'm designing an invitation. Like you have a lot of people who live here. If you were really interested in attracting high-end retail, you would express your brand in a slightly different way. If you're looking to attract more working families, then you might express your brand in a slightly different way. So that does help in the editing material a little bit. Like if you wanted to attract Dolce Gabbana, you would design in that way. So it's something for you guys to think about. Like I would assume that really working engaged families and working engaged small and mid-sized business kind of lives inside of your highest level of attraction. And the expression that you see for the work that we did for Columbia Heights, all they wanted was young families. Like young families was it. They wanted to attract young families. So the work that we did was really, really animated, and it was really like expressive towards that market.
Mhm.
Becker really was like, really, they wanted small business. They wanted like light industrial stuff. And Becker's a really interesting community because they joke about being like 1 block wide and like 2 miles long, like it's all along Highway 10.
They are.
Like that is their community.
Mhm.
And like both brand identity systems are really successful at attracting their markets. So this one goes a little bit higher. It's a little bit more working. It's a little bit more like less classical, less Audrey Hepburn. So these are the 4 that we did so far. And we're not done. This isn't the finish. It's not like you pick one and we do it. What I want you guys to have is some dialogue around you're creating an expression of Delano as a brand, but it's, you're not soda pop and you're not shampoo. You're a community and you're expressing to a community. All of these are great in our minds, otherwise they wouldn't be on the board. Certainly when you get up in this upper left-hand community, this is our most historic expression of the brand. It doesn't have to be exactly like this. It can move in a different direction. Up in the right-hand corner, much more working middle-class expression of a business community. This one, I would say a little bit more gender neutral. Delano, which is how we're going to call it from now on, the Delano approach. It is designed to be a little bit softer. If you're more focused on being a bedroom community, then that would certainly be a direction that I'd recommend. This one is probably a hybrid of most of these. This one probably makes the biggest deal of some of the cool, very unique and novel things in the community. But the message I'd give to you, and I'm using your whole meeting time here, so I apologize for that, because I could talk all day. Like the truth is you have a lot of really great assets here and they're really fun to design inside of. And it's been a joy doing this stuff. Our goal, after you guys have a time to digest this and think about a little bit, think about the aesthetics. That's important, but think more about who you want to attract and who are the most important parts of the community you want to attract to. Like that's the first thing I ask to any client. It's like, you got a community, who are the best members of the community you want to attract? And it's different for every city. Certainly this, Minnesota State Fair, that design project took 2 years. It was a 2-year experience, which was a lot of fun. But they had to really kind of wrestle with what they were going to do for the next 50 years. And huge success, by the way, like Minnesota State Fair, as in terms of like them running a business, they're really smart. They're like smart folks. They ultimately went for a direction that was very, very close to city branding. Like that's why I kind of throw it into municipal, because they really wanted to be like Minnesota's every city. Like that's what they wanted. And when they finally refined where they wanted to invite their brand, that really helped a lot. All right, should I talk more? Because I can go all night.
So when you called historic, what did you call number 2?
Number 2, I would call this much more working class.
Working class.
And I would say it's really right in the middle ground of small town Minnesota. Like it's designed to look like a small town Minnesota brand. And that's fine. That's legitimate. You have expressions of that all through the city already. One thing about this town, just driving around here, everything is named Delano. Delano Dentistry, Delano Fitness. Like obviously people like that name. If people are using the brand name as a prefix brand, like really most communities don't do that. Like they just don't. Flint, Michigan doesn't have Flint Fitness and they don't have like Flint Dentistry. They just don't, because it's not the brand they want to express. But driving around here, we just kept pictures of all the businesses that had Delano in front of it. So that says a lot. Like that makes my job a lot easier, because obviously people like that name and they like the community. But in terms of the expression, I think it has much more to do for you to decide who you want to invite and who's the most important community. But in terms of like illustrating all the stuff in the town, like that's really been a joy. That's been a lot of fun. And I look forward to doing more of it. I hope you have a rifle range at some point. So I would love to illustrate that one too.
Well, the
Kinda
Sportsman
do,
Club.
Yeah, right. We do. We have the Sportsman's Club out north of town. Yeah.
Write that one down.
County line road there.
Can we move the county line? Can we adjust it?
We've discussed that.
Well, we got
We're
really,
just like putting one foot on one side and one foot on the other.
we got really fudgy with that with Columbia Heights because they have a really great archery park that it's still debated whether it's actually in Columbia Heights or if it's in Northeast.
Oh,
But we took it. Or we
well,
decided,
who owns it?
the Columbia Heights has it. They have Northeast claims it's theirs.
And then when you talked about, the Heights Theater, like the city obviously didn't own that, but they want to
No.
preserve it.
No, not at all.
Like, I'm thinking about the Onion Dome, same here, like, we don't necessarily control it, like, if the diocese decide to like chop it down, like, you know,
Hopefully that will be the case. I designed a great co-op in the city of Davis, California, and Davis, again, very small community. They have a lot of really interesting things, and we just grabbed all of them. Like the tagline for the Davis Co-op was "Welcome to Davis," and we just went around town and we picked everything. And the city loved it. Like this, it was like people just loved it. I'm going to assume you're going to make allies with whoever you decide to do some more fancy
yeah,
illustrations.
okay,
Well, I
yeah,
mean, the good thing is they just redid the Onion Dome
yeah,
within the last 20.
Yeah, I know,
I'm sure it's staying.
right,
But,
I don't
yeah,
think it's
no,
going
I
anywhere
don't think so
either,
either,
but
but-
like if some major
Right.
lightning bolt hit it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
I would say make them semi-disposable brand assets. Like if you can see in that illustration, it wouldn't be reliant on any one thing
Yeah,
to work.
okay.
So make them as disposable as they need to.
Mhm.
But I would say in the case of that church, like anything you do for them as a city that you give to them for free
Mhm.
will make them very, very happy,
I'm proud of their.
proud, and just glad that you
Yeah.
noticed them. Like
Mhm.
glad that you noticed them. Like we joke about the rifle range, but if like we were to do some work for them, they'd probably be like, well, okay, I don't hate Delano.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, there's-
and really, that's important. That's like,
True.
it's an important thing when we did the Davis Food Co-op, which is great client. They had huge pressures by Target coming into town and a small town, you know, it's a little tiny town,
Mhm.
and Trader Joe's coming into town and cities doing what cities doing, like getting development and getting material. But they really needed to make the city more of an ally for the co-op for their growth. And the work that we did helped make the city more of an ally. Because we took all the pieces around the town and we kind of
Mhm.
made it more
Mhm.
material. So I forget, I think Bryce, you were telling me about just the parks or the
Archery park.
the playground company.
Landscape.
Yeah, landscape. Okay, so it sounds like they're a pretty good ally to the community.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're, yeah, that's someone to lean into. Whether it's something very deliberate that like it's their building, or if it's one of their parks that they design, then we do a really cool illustration for it, and it's just something we do for them. Because they want to keep them as like a really good ally.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And that's where design is that's really the best use of design, is just like really just leveraging your partnerships and leaning into it. And again, we're dorks, we're illustrators, like that's what we do. That's why we like doing this stuff. So as you start to think of your list of stuff you'd like to do, like that's important. Like we haven't done anything with the river yet, and that's still a big asset to the community. That's something we need to address. We haven't done much of the parks yet, so we have to do some of that work. But I mean, just from my studio to you, like we feel really honored to be working on this stuff. This is the most fun thing in the studio, by the way. On a long list of fun things, this is the one we're all very excited about.
Are you able, when you're done tonight, able to share, email us, or are we gonna have access to the
Sure. I think she's got-
slide deck?
Yeah.
Yep, I will email this out to council. We
Yep.
will be putting this out on social media as well to ask for public input with a few
Yeah.
questions to do as well.
And-
So,
Every designer has a different opinion on this, but I've been doing this for 30 years. I would get more opinions than less.
Mhm.
When we did Columbia Heights, which was the most extreme example, they have a big street fair, not as big as your event, but it's, it's a couple thousand people. We put up huge boards, like in the park, like each board was 4x8. It was huge. And we had jars with marbles and we just had people take
Mhm.
marbles. And miraculously, the direction that we liked the best and one the city liked the best was the same one that the community liked the best,
Mhm.
which was actually helpful.
Yeah,
because they dug it.
Absolutely.
So getting feedback is important. Our job is to take this first round of work, get your comments, and then move it forward with 2 or 3 directions that sort of take the comments that you've had and align them with what we want to do for Delano.
Mhm.
Cool.
Good,
Yeah.
perfect.
All right, I'm very available.
And then you'll, along with the slide deck, you're gonna give us like your questions, basically?
Sure.
Like the homeworky questions?
Homework really important for me is like, what are your favorite parts of the city?
Mhm.
Okay.
What are the special areas that I don't know about?
Okay.
Because like when I discovered the Kramer sign with the CK, I was like, yeah, I'm doing that.
Yeah.
Gonna do something with that because that's awesome. But when we did this for Becker and for Columbia Heights and for the Minnesota State Fair and for Davis, like we didn't know any of those places. Like we drove around the town for days looking for
Mhm.
stuff. So if there's a special park that you like, or something that's not even officially called, if it's a fishing hole or a swimming area that's even kind of off the books, like we can make that something special.
Or like a chicken?
Or if there's one chicken, I restrained not doing the chicken yet. I'm saving the chicken because,
Saving the chicken.
well, because if it was up to me, I would make the chicken the city logo. That's the first thing we wanted to do is the chicken.
It's the first thing you see coming in from the east, isn't it?
My designers held me back. They held me back from doing the chicken, but we're certainly gonna do something with the chicken. There's no way we're not gonna do the chicken.
Well, Ben Franklin had his way, the symbol of the United States would be a turkey.
Yes, yeah,
You may have heard.
yeah. Much more practical bird
Mhm.
Yeah. and probably tastes better than an eagle.
Oh, yeah.
I bet Ben had both.
Do Della cluck cluck.
Write that down.
Very very dangerous. Molly.
I do need to find out the etymology of the chicken. Like we still haven't dug into that yet. Like how did the chicken arrive here? Why is the chicken there?
Because the owner of what is now the BP, it used to be a town thumb store and he was Chicken John.
How did he become?
Because he owned the store that made the chicken, and so he became Chicken John.
And Dale,
His boys are called barbecue and what they call him.
Oh, God, that's beautiful.
What Bill's name is,
Something.
what do they call Flippin' Bill?
Flippin'
Flippin' Bill.
well,
His
so
bro- That's John's brother, Flippin' Bill.
I know that, well, Dale, the mayor, he made the comment, because I mean, I didn't see this part, but anybody can jump in on it, but I know that when he had excess chicken or something, at the end of the day, he would bring it down to the Legion. That's what Dale said. Some weeks,
No,
about a
we
month ago.
barbecued it.
But didn't he ever like had excess chicken to get rid of and he brought it to the Legion?
did.
Didn't he say that one night? We said it. He talked about it at the workshop.
I bet it's
No,
very,
man.
it's very popular.
I think that's
He did.
part with the chicken.
I'm sure he did.
I'm sure he did. He
Partly
barbecued it and then took it down to Legion.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's gonna be some chicken expression. I mean, if you give chicken t-shirts to kids, they're gonna wear them.
If you could see how many Instagrams are in front of that chicken.
Yeah.
A good friend of mine, Mickey Smith's photographer, she drove across the state of Minnesota for summer. This is 20 years ago, archiving all of like
The plastic.
the chickens,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
fish.
The ball of
Sinclair,
And it was
Sinclair Brontosaurus.
it was for the Smithsonian, so I know that chicken was photographed in that series. So it's in some file somewhere, like for Minnesota vernacular art.
Yeah.
That's
Did you look at the drive-in, the peppermint twist?
no,
I'm surprised. Oh, I'm sorry I didn't look at that because that's sort of iconic and
Yeah.
was in a number of local Twin Cities magazines and
That's
even
the
nationally,
best-
some
the best
national stuff too,
drive-through.
isn't it?
In
Yeah,
Minnesota,
best drive-through Minnesota.
where's that located?
on the highway.
Highway 12.
Wow.
Pink and
If you go across Bridge Avenue and take left, you'll see it on the right. It's
Mhm.
bright pink,
Yeah,
bubble
with
gum
teddy bears.
pink.
I'm willing
Teddy
to get a heart attack by eating everything they have.
Yeah, I think they might be closed for the season.
They are
It's the-
season,
one of
but
the owners of her town.
April.
What's up? Now I gotta wait till spring.
I'm sorry.
Come on. All right, I'm gonna let you guys get your meeting.
I'm gonna give you this.
Thank you.
I wrote this. My wife and I used to have a newspaper and it's a Delano, Wright County, some history from a Polish perspective, but there's Delano stuff in there, which you might have heard or not heard. So there's might be snippets you can find useful.
Is there a pretty robust Polish community here?
Used to be
Mhm.
50% German, 50% Polish in
Wow.
this town.
Was there
That's
a
why
war?
we have two Catholic churches.
That's why
That is why we have two Catholic churches, because we have the